So today what we'll be doing is we'll be taking a look at obtuse angles. How do we know if we understand what's going on, and what are we doing? What are we doing is we're going to identify obtuse and acute angles based on ratios. Now, how do we know if we understand? Basically, this is it. We know if an angle is obtuse or acute by using ratios, the ratio signs. Now, an acute angle is this: less than 90 degrees, and obtuse angles are greater than 90 degrees. Now, so far we've mostly dealt with triangles, so the other triangles have always been acute. Now, I was going to ask you to do an investigation on the text. Basically what you're going to do is you're just going to fill in, you're going to do the calculation for all of these angles. Now I've done this to 4 decimal places. You will do this to 6. You'll notice some patterns, and what I want you to do is I want you to answer the questions that were given. You'll notice on your chart that there are matching numbers for each ratio that we calculate. When we calculate sine of 2, we get 0.0349, and then when we take a look at its supplementary angle of 178, we end up with the same ratio. Now, it's kind of weird how that works, but basically this is all due to the fact that if I have two angles that add up to 180, their ratio will be the same. The only difference is their signs will change sometimes. Now, let's go and identify the acute angles. These angles here are acute. These angles here are obtuse because these angles are greater than 90. And now, in between here, exactly halfway, there is a dividing line of 90 degrees. Now, like we said, all angles that add to 180 are called supplementary, and the key here is if I have two angles which are supplementary, they will have the same ratio number. The only difference is sometimes they might be negative and positive. Now you'll notice here I've identified that, but their signs might be different. Now on our chart, if we were taking a look at our numbers, the ratios for sine for degrees from 0 to 90 are positive for 0 to 90, and also positive from 90 to 180. For cosine, we also have positive again, but then for 90 to 100, you'll notice that the ratios are the same, but the sign is different. The same goes for tan as well. Now, based on the chart that we have above, we can make some statements. So if I know that the angle A is 38, we know that tan of A, so what we do is we look for the angle. Tan of A is 38, and 0 to 90 is within this range here, and we go over to tan, and we will know that it is positive. Now for angle Q, we have 116 degrees. So that is an obtuse angle. So cos Q is, now please remember to label these as acute and obtuse. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is tan. Now if tan of B is negative 0.8, so what we have to do here negative 1.8, is we look where tan is negative, and because it's negative, we know that it is obtuse, i.e. the angle B is obtuse. For the ratio of tan of f equal 3 over 5, we know that 3 over 5 is a positive number, and we're looking at the tan of the angle. So what we have to do is we have to look at the chart. We look at the chart, we notice that 3 over 5 is positive, so we go to tan and we look for the positive, which means it is an acute angle. Now, sine of A is equal to 0.77. Now remember, this is positive, right? This ratio is positive. That means angle A is both acute or obtuse. Now, we'll move on to the next thing. I want you to write down the following note so that we don't have any questions. So if sine is positive, there are two possible answers for sine of A. Your calculator always gives you the acute angle. And what we need to do in order to get the other angle is we use the supplementary angle to find it, to find the other angle. Now essentially what we're doing is we're taking whatever the angle is, so for the second angle all you do is take 180 minus the angle to find the second angle for sine. For every one of these ratio calculations there are two parts, and I'll identify them for you. The first part is to find the acute angle. We call that the acute reference angle. And in order to do this, we only find the inverse of the positive sign. And now based on the sign we give the angle. Now for sine there are two angles. The original reference angle. So for number 1, A, the angle is A is equal to 50 degrees, and B, the second angle, is equal to 180 minus 50 degrees, which equals 130, because sine is positive in both the acute and obtuse ranges. Let's do cosine of B. We'll follow the same pattern that we did before for cosine B. So we got 2. We're going to find, instead of AR, we're going to find the reference angle for B, BR. And that's by finding, we look at the ratio, we notice that it's positive, so we leave it positive and we just solve for it. So BR, so cosine of BR is equal to 0.46. And now we'll go cosine inverse of 0.46, and that is BR. So BR is going to equal 63 degrees. So now that I got BR being 63 degrees, we have to state the angle. You'll notice. So 2, we state the angle based on the sine of the ratio. Now, the sine of the ratio in this case is positive. So if I look at the original ratio that we found, we notice it's positive. Now, you go back to your charts and you'll notice, because the angle is positive, because the ratio is positive, that means the angle must be acute. So therefore our angle A, angle B is just the regular acute angle that we just calculated right here. So B is equal to 63 degrees. The reason why we didn't do 180 minus 63 is because the ratio, the decimal, is positive when we started. Now let's move on to tan of C. We're going to try and find C. So C is identical to what we did before. Tan of C is identical to what we did before, except this time you'll notice that we have a negative ratio. So because it's negative, we're going to eventually find the obtuse angle. But first, we're going to find BR. We're going to find CR. So tan of CR is going to be, well, we drop the negative sign, so we get 5/4. We do our calculation. Find our angle, and our angle is tan inverse of 5/4. Now, this was step 1. Our CR value is going to be 51 degrees. Now 2, we've got our reference angle, and so what we're going to do is now we have to look at the sign. Like we said here, we notice that it's negative, and tan is only negative when we have an obtuse angle. So we're going to have to take our reference angle and we're going to have to subtract it from 180 to get the appropriate angle. So C is equal to 180 minus 51 degrees, and our final answer is 129 degrees. So now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to do questions number 5 to 7 on the next page. Now, you should have done number 5 to 7. I already handed that out. What I'd like you to do is fill in the summary chart and then do the problems just like we did before on this sheet.